Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I like to do something a little unusual, very unusual actually for this channel. I want to discuss the obscure right-wing media, but the obscure right-wing media that doesn't want to be obscure, like GB News. Piers Morgan has found it a bit tough on Murdoch's new TalkTV channel, which tries to cover the same ground as GB News. And after initially good first show, he had good figures first one, he had ratings that seemed to then collapse for the following week. And I mean collapse. And this isn't a point and laugh video either. You may be thinking, oh, we're going to have a laugh at Piers Morgan, he's messed up again. No, I actually think it's genuinely fascinating. And I think I also have a quite novel position to be able to add some context here. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there have been a couple of attempts to foist even more right-wing commentary onto our airwaves recently. We had GB News, which went through a fairly disastrous birthing process where it ended up with officially 0 views, which is pretty much what Murdoch's TalkTV is on now. 0 views. Andrew Neil ran away, Nigel Farage came in, and they now have some views for his bits, the bits that are him. Essentially, the views on GB News are Nigel Farage's. Everyone else still gets very low views. But I'll get on to what that means exactly later. What I want to look at here is Piers Morgan's latest broadcasting attempt. Now, the way it's been presented in some reports, and I'll link one below so you can have a look at it, is that the likes of GB News and now Rupert Murdoch's TalkTV are failing to understand that there really isn't much of a fervent anti-woke viewership out there. They've overestimated the number of people who would be attracted to their sort of content. Now, I'm going to say off the bat, I'm going to look at Piers Morgan's recent foray a bit differently to some, because there's lots of people pointing and laughing at the fact his launch had 317,000 views, but then he only got 62,000 views in the same slot a week later. So he got an initial surge of interest, people going, oh, let's have a look at this. But then he failed to use that to encourage people to come back to it. Okay. Now, unlike many others on this anti-woke bandwagon, I think Piers Morgan is a bit more complex. Like, I quite like it when you get people who don't fit into a box, because I think too many people just see, they're too simplistic about their tribalism. Someone is either good or bad, and that's all there is to it. And, and their good person can't do bad things. You have to excuse it. And the bad people can't do good things. You have to come up with some ulterior motive. And often in our toxic, polarised political society, people just adopt a side, and then everyone that's seen as being on that side is automatically good, and everyone on any other side is automatically bad. Hence, every lawyer who challenges the government on its law breaking is automatically a leftist lawyer. Oh no, they can't possibly be at all right-wing because they're challenging the government. Same, on the hard left, you've got some people who attack Starmer just because he wasn't the pick from their team. The same people who whined about smears in the Daily Mail against Corbyn now cheer those same smears against Starmer. We are a society of largely blinkered tribes. Our people are mostly sheeple. But Piers Morgan doesn't quite fit. He was heavily involved in the phone hacking scandal that destroyed News of the World. He really should have faced criminal charges for the nature and sheer scale of his involvement. It was inhuman what he did. He's a raging misogynist, and I mean raging, literally. He's exceptionally obnoxious to people and will call you a snowflake if you get the tiniest bit upset. Yet, he stormed out of his own TV show when a colleague gently challenged him on something, showing his own thin skin. But he also talked about gun controls while he was working for Fox News in the USA. Now, he's not a stupid man. He must have known it would be received poorly. But he said it because he couldn't go along with their gun culture. In 2020, he was holding Conservative government ministers to account over their COVID failures. He was a real terrier. He became a real champion of the people during that period, before his raging misogynism kicked in again. He even criticised Trump publicly when that was clearly not in his long-term commercial interest. Trump's turned off him now. He's a terrible man, but his skills are sometimes put to good use, and he sometimes deliberately does good with them. Unlike someone like Andrew Neil, also highly skilled, top of his field, but I can't remember them ever being put to non-partisan public good. So I don't look at the recent Piers Morgan failure to secure his new talk show with partisan glee, but genuine interest, because I want to look at why it is. Why is GB News failing? Why is TalkTV now looking like it's in the same box? Is it because actually they've overestimated the number of people who are interested? Because let's look at some viewing figures. Then I'm going to compare them to my own. So when it comes to getting viewing figures, I use Barb, which is the Broadcasters Audience Research Board. Can't use it for TalkTV because it's too recent. I can only get like a couple of months ago. So the months I can get at the moment on there are the first 3 of this year, January, February, March. So let's go with those for GB News, a similar type of channel. So this table, I'll go through it. It compares my viewing figures and engagement with GB News in those same months. And let me run through the columns. So GB News views in thousands. So they get about 2.5 million to my about 3 to 4 million a month. Now, they broadcast in the UK, so I should just use my UK figures. So that comes out actually about half of my overall view. So later on in the column, I've got my UK views. I then worked out the total number of hours watched for their channel and mine in each month, because what you want to compare them, because we could have different numbers of views, but also different amount of engagement. What we want is how many hours of content are watched on each channel. Again, mine just for the UK viewers. Now, and this is where it gets a bit tricky actually to decipher the data, because the way Barb put it on there, it looks weird. So you look at the hours watched for mine, and it works out about 200 hours watched per month by UK viewers. 200,000, that is. 200 hours. Then you look at GB News and you think, well, that only comes up to about 20,000 odd hours a month being watched. So because it was saying, an average of 33 seconds-ish that people are watching GB News. But then it said per day, not per viewer. So I thought that's an odd way to phrase it. Is that different to average views per viewer? So I figured it must be. I figured when they're saying it per day, right, they're doing something weird here. I'll just times it by the number of days in the month. So that's what I did. I multiplied each value by the number of days in those months. And that's the second hours watched column there, the expanded one. So we'll go with that because it's the only way to come out with a figure that makes sense. But then it makes you wonder about funding. Like GB News are getting more hours watched than on my channel. But 2 or 3 times as much in the UK only. In terms of overall hours watched, no, slightly more. In terms of, in fact, it does work out slightly more. But in terms of UK views, it's 2, sometimes 3 times as many. So they're getting hardly any hours watched on their channel, really. They also have advertisers boycotting them. And I'll tell you something, they're not getting much advertising revenue. Because I know what advertising revenue I get. And you compare it to what they're getting for their hours watched. And even if we take that inflated figure, which I think must be right, they're not getting enough to pay for their accommodation, staffing and other resources. What I get is very nice income from this. For me, one person. If you treble it, which is at best what they're getting, and they're not really getting that because remember I halved my views just to take account of the UK viewers, but I actually have double the number of hours watched realistically that you're looking at there. You wouldn't even get the staffing costs of their presenters. It might not even cover Nigel Farage's wages alone. I don't know what he gets. This is a channel that has been entirely funded by special interest wealth. We know that they were given a cash injection to get going, 60 million quid. But it's clear to me they're going to be entirely funded by this. They aren't self-funding. They're not going to be self-funding on this model. They're not getting anywhere near enough views. Which brings me back to Murdoch's TalkTV and Piers Morgan. They basically had a year to see that GB News was getting nowhere. As a business, it doesn't work. The business plan doesn't work. So you have to draw one of 2 conclusions. First, that GB News don't know what they're doing. That there is an audience for that content, but they executed it poorly, so they're not attracting that audience. Now, that is potentially true. Their production values incredibly poor from the start. The people they got to present mostly had no experience, so even less training. They were people who'd done well on different media outlets or platforms, but couldn't translate it into broadcasting gold. So they got the wrong people, you could argue. So they brought in Nigel Farage, seasoned broadcaster. He did well for them, but the viewing figures outside of his contributions remained dire. So maybe Murdoch thought he could get the views that GB News weren't attracting with a more effective pitch. So that's one way of you looking at it. The second conclusion is that Rupert Murdoch just doesn't care. He's happy to see the odd media platform as a loss leader, like The Sun, losing money, in order to shore up his position by persuading enough people to vote against their interests and in his. In other words, you look at it as he's spending money on a propaganda machine and he knows that's all it is. There's no business model because it can't be run as a business. But whatever they're thinking, you probably can say there is actually a limited pool of viewers who want to watch divisive bile on their televisions. So it'd be interesting to see TalkTV's rating in a couple of months. Piers Morgan was delighted with his first instalment. I mean, 317,000, that's pretty good. I've only had that for 2 of my videos in all the time I've been doing this, and certainly never that many in a single hour or even a single day. But what his views have now dropped down to is certainly on par with my content. And then maybe it's just the outlet that's wrong. Then I thought, are they just getting it wrong here? There might not be much of an audience on television for this sort of content. There are proponents who do better on YouTube. Because it's all right comparing it with me, you know, but maybe their target audience is more willing to engage with YouTube or similar social media platforms than television. So Maya Tusi, for example, he often pushes similar lines, but with more success. He gets better figures than GB News. He bangs out a large number of very short reaction videos. Doesn't waste a lot of time fact-checking. Now, I don't know how many actual viewers he has as in real viewers, because only he will know that. I can see how many views he gets, but not how many viewers. But putting out several short videos a day is only the same as a TV channel putting out several shows a day, isn't it? Of course it is. As an aside, it is an interesting approach that I had considered in the early days of the channel myself. You know, lots of short videos rather than a few more detailed ones. Not always easy to judge which topics will be of the most interest. And there are YouTube viewers who will watch 10 5-minute videos in a row, but they won't watch a single 15-minute video because that's too long. But don't worry, people will be going, no, don't change. I do what I do, and I only make changes when I need to, as was the case last month. There's no more need for changes at the moment. But in the smaller and more easily accessible format via a smartphone means you maybe have more potential to reach what is actually a relatively small potential audience of people who will spend their time listening to people telling you to hate your neighbours. Maybe where the backers of both GB News and TalkTV are going wrong is not in the execution as such, but being stuck in the past and using the wrong media outlets. You know, maybe even being stuck in the past and using the wrong sorts of presenter as well. Morgan and Neil, highly skilled interviewers and broadcasters. But is that the wrong way to tap into their target audience these days? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. Maybe even click on the join button if you'd be interested in membership. And until next time, I'll see you later.